Okay, happy Monday as I'm putting this together. It feels like forever since I streamed at 1 p.m., but I'm back midday. I think the heat is finally breaking, which is good because it was getting pretty darn hot. We're back with DC20, hopefully finishing it off today. We'll see how that goes. I hope I won't be too out of sorts since it's been a minute, longer than I thought it would be since I looked at part one. We're starting with the combat section. I think similar to the first dream. I'm interested in the kind of broad strokes, what they're doing. I'm not going to be trying to break down everything or read every particular paragraph. It becomes laborious. If you out there have some experience with DC20, luck at that. Last time I was lucky enough to have, I think, at least one person in the chat at the time who had some experience with DC20, so they were able to kind of point me in the right direction and showcase things that I might have been missing. If that is you and you're here as I'm recording it, I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep muddling through, and we'll see where we get. I don't know what the best. With this, the one thing I've noticed, I might need to hold on, I need to fix. Let me fix some things here. This is the kind of I feel like because there's the text is small enough that as much as I'd like to show multiple pages, it's just easier for me to do this way because it's just the print is small. At least for my old man eyes, the print is small. Okay, so let's just get to it. So this is starting combat. We've got common encounters. Each round is 12 seconds. Okay. And was it 6 seconds in 5e? Tendency 612. It divides 60, right? So we're having 5 turns a minute instead of 6, or instead of 10 turns a minute, or 6 turns a minute if you use 10-second turns. Thought my cat had me out, but that wasn't the case. Time in combat, okay. All right, yeah. So there, I'm doing the math, and it's right there. So 1 round of combat is 12 seconds. 5 rounds of combat is 1 turn. All good. Here's a DC tip. Referring to the first round of combat means the first 12 seconds for each creature will have 1 turn. If a PC uses an ability lasts for 1 round, that effect still lasts 12 seconds, which means each creature will have 1 turn since the use of that ability, and will last until the start of the creature's next turn. Okay. I don't know that we needed that clarification, but that doesn't hurt. For each encounter, the GM will set a DC to represent the overall difficulty of challenges within the encounter. So we're getting into kind of a 5e. Well, I mean, this is a 5e competitor. So I'm saying, like, we're getting into it. No, it's there. So we're having some kind of difficulty, what do they call it? Difficulty challenge, difficulty check, difficulty of challenge, I guess. Maybe DC instead of DOC. I know they're just trying to keep it as compatible with 5th edition as possible. This serves as the default threshold for most skill checks during combat. Some DCs might be different than the encounter DC based on other game mechanics that already have set formulas, such as creatures' passive scores and defenses. So here's an example of a PC is attempting to take the hide action. They're trying to beat the passive awareness of the enemies. This passive awareness could be equal to the encounter DC, or the GM may decide that certain enemies would have a higher or lower passive awareness. This could also be true for picking certain locks or disarming tricky traps. So this is the thing that Index Card RPG uses, and I think some other systems use, where I think Index RPG uses a lot. In other words, you come into a room or an area and it will have a DC, and basically everything in the room, including enemies, is of that difficulty. I think I haven't used it. A lot of people really like it, and I from a simplicity and kind of ease of use, just being able to say, hey, you're on dungeon in this area of the dungeon in this room, it's DC 10, so everything's DC 10, and everything it goes like that. I don't necessarily love it. Haven't played it. Strikes me as maybe being a little too much in the direction of lacking. Do I want to say verisimilitude? Not really. Just I think some things should be easier or harder. And I know I believe there are ways to amend that. This is kind of taking a similar tack, because I don't remember, say, 5th edition having kind of an encounter DC. I mean, encounter DC, they'll talk about the CR of the various things in there, various things within a challenge. Brian Smith says room DC is smooth the table. I bet it is. And like I said, I haven't played it. It just strikes me as being a little bit too much. And I think for a lot of things, I mean, we're going to kind of OSR systems. I feel like they're pretty simple enough. But I could see, coming from like a 5e kind of modern D&D, really more crunchy standpoint, that's really appealing. Well, I'd love to try it. Maybe I'll get a chance to run it or play in one day. And then, so anyway, sorry. So 5th edition has CR for creating a challenge, but that CR doesn't translate into one difficulty. This seems like they're kind of taking it. Maybe they played a little or have seen some of the other systems that just give an overall DC. So they're saying, hey, you could use it, but they're not being programmatic in that DC. So you can have a room DC and then have things in it that vary. So if you want to have a room that's DC 10, or I guess in this case an encounter that's DC 10, but then there's one creature in there who's beefier or wilier, or a lock that's trickier, you can have that be a different DC. So it's kind of cool. So it's kind of giving a little bit of best of both worlds. Now, I think probably the one nice thing about having it be set is that you don't have to worry about such things. And if you have to worry about it, if all kinds of stuff can vary from the encounter DC, then it tends to, how worthwhile is it to have one? So there's a little bit of I guess, a rope you're trying to, you're trying to stand on. Whereas, hey, you're giving GMs explicitly the choice to vary things from the DC, but it can also lead to that everything has its own DC. Ryan Smith, your second comment, V, what? What is that? What is that in reference to? I missed it. Is it something I said? Something you said? Okay. So here's an example of the system. The GM sets the encounter DC to 15. This means that when the barbarian tries to lift the boulder off the ground, the ranger tries to remember information about a monster, or the rogue tries to climb up some vines, the DC is 15. Alternatively, if picking a certain lock is the key to beating this encounter, the GM might decide this is a hard DC of 20, possibly higher. So yeah, so this is kind of similar to an index card thing, right? You have all these different actions in the room, and Bryce was talking about verisimilitude. Just saying that, yes, well, if you're using the drinking game, then verisimilitude would trigger the drink. But it just that, having all the different DCs. So in this case, you get to set a ground rule DC, basically your base DC, and then you can vary it up and down as you will. You're just calling it out. Yeah, I hear you. It should absolutely be called out. So I kind of think this is probably a nice middle ground between the sort of everything is the same DC that you have an index card, and everything is a floating DC. One thing I will say, and this is maybe just taste or flavor. No, taste, not flavor. So flavor is something you taste, but no, I mean flavor, as in my flavor. I don't want to set a bunch of DCs. That's part of my thing. I think I appreciate in a lot of kind of and sort of the old school kind of approach is you're sort of a lot of times you're rolling against the world. In other words, if a thief wants to hide, they just roll their hide check and then they hide or they don't hide. They don't have to roll versus something that I set. So I am not trying to figure out the DC because I get it in this standpoint that in these kind of narrative games where you're sort of balancing everything at levels, then this kind of encounter stuff makes absolute sense. If I'm making a first level dungeon, then maybe I want my encounters for most, or my encounter DCs for most things to be, I don't know, whatever easy is, say 10, and then maybe for the boss or the room I get 15, and maybe there's something extra and that one's 20. I totally get it. At the same time, I also really appreciate the fact that I don't have to think about that, and I'm not really trying to balance things like that. So I could just have a room with skeletons and other things to throw in there, and whatever. And if the thief hides, they hide. And if they don't hide, they're in trouble. Or the barbarian rages, whatever. It's kind of they're sort of just, I guess, in a sense, they're kind of just universal, if that makes sense. But I think if you're coming from a 5th edition background, which this is obviously aimed at you, 5th edition players and GMs, I think that's probably something you'd appreciate a lot. You set a whole DC for the encounter, and then great, you're done. And you're not trying to figure out all these different finagling numbers. DC tip here is keep in mind PCs can help each other find things and grant themselves advantage. So it's possible through teamwork and AP spent to hit DCs that might be more difficult to hit with a straight D20 roll. Good to know. Okay, initiative. This is all right. So we got I don't really care too much about initiative. I just want to know. So it's basically PC. Okay, so it's side initiative is what we would call it. Whereas the one side versus the other side, and then you go. There's also a interesting. So okay, so instead of rolling a number and comparing high number, you set a DC for the initiative, and that's what the PCs have to meet to go first. So I guess the monsters don't have to roll at all. The PCs will roll, and then if the PCs make the roll, then they go first. So then they say the DC is usually 5 higher than the encounter DC. So if your encounter DC was 15, then the DC for initiative is 20. That's interesting. I mean, can you help? Can you do things to mitigate that, or just go? I don't know. Okay, so we're rolling for initiative. Now we're on to initiative checks. That's fine. We have. I'm kind of interested in these examples. So on the initiative check, we have an example. One PC is talking to a group of enemy bandits while another PC is sneaking around behind them. If combat were to break out, the initiative check for the talking PC would be an influence check, while the sneaking PC would make a stealth check. Ah, I see. So is this a different thing? Okay, so we have. Oh, I guess you don't. Do you? Okay. Well, wait a minute. So I guess you have the side initiative, but then you also have individual initiative. Hmm. Well, this is certainly intriguing. I like the idea that you have different things. That the now putting aside, I'm not going to go back and try to read what influence means if somehow you're influencing them, but I imagine that some kind of awareness of what things are happening in the conversation. Maybe you can kind of keep them distracted by talking while you, I don't know, whip your sword out and then stab them in the face. I guess would kind of be what that influence check would be. Stealth check kind of makes sense, but I like that they're different things. It's not just a flat number. It's not just your dex. Maybe there could be, I mean, it's neat to know that there could be a whole host of different things you can try to bring to bear. So the stealthy person obviously can try to be stealthy all the time and hence have that as their kind of initiative role. I mean, if you're the thief part, right, you want to be kind of in stealth, sneaking around, and there you'll be able to use the thing that you're good at if you can set it up right to go, which is kind of neat, kind of nice. Alternatively, if you're the talky bard face of the party type, you have a way to try to go first. You're not kind of stuck. You're not stuck out. Whoops. Which is also kind of nice. You can do that. I'm curious how they'll work overall in play, or whether people just default to doing side initiative, because side initiative is one of those that's kind of easy. I actually like individual initiative, but I don't have a problem with side initiative because it's fast and speed is good, at least in my opinion. But that's kind of cool. Let's see. There's a DC tip here. This might be very obvious for some PCs who require some groupthink for others. Let this be a creative and collaborative effort as a team. And then we have some examples. Hey, Ian. All right. What session? So Ian said that they're playing DC20 tonight. Awesome. What session number are you on? So we have some examples of when I guess this individual initiative might work, which I think might be illustrative. The rogue was caught pickpocketing, so they would make a trickery check. The ranger knows the beast you're about to fight very well, so they'd make an animal check. The monk is investigating a pile of bones before a monster attacks. Investigation check. So it's kind of like, okay, so this is interesting. So it seems like the thing you are doing is going to basically, whatever it is you're doing, whatever skill that's attached to, is going to be the thing that you roll against for initiative, which I think is pretty cool. If you're going to have skills and stuff, this is a neat way to do it. If you're good at investigating, then you sort of have your eye and whatever, you're using your senses and you're looking at it, and then you're kind of more aware of it as it jumps at you, which is actually kind of different than I think oftentimes a lot of things work, which is when, say, the monk who's investigating the pile of bones that's going to animate into some kind of zombie or skeletal creature and attack. Usually the person who is investigating, when they roll for surprise and stuff, and usually that person's probably disadvantaged because they're going to be closest to the creature and they don't get any kind of advantage on initiative. So if they lose initiative or they're surprised, then they just get attacked. In this case, the fact that they're investigating, if they're a strong investigator, they're actually going to have a better chance maybe than somebody else, because presumably the person who's back there just doing something else, if the rogue was caught pickpocketing an NPC behind, he's got his back turned, he can't use that, I would presume, for initiative on the skeleton beast thing, I guess. I mean, but it's cool. I dig where it's coming from. Whoa, some Renaissance Fair randoms. Ian, I overheard some folks talking D&D at last year's Ren Fest, but I didn't get it. I didn't get involved. It was funny because they were talking about, they were kind of, I think, 5th edition players, but they're talking about kind of old school D&D, but it was kind of funny. They had some stuff kind of wrong, but I didn't step in and say, excuse me, allow me to correct you. I am Sir Grognard. Allow me to correct you. No, I didn't do that. So, but I was kind of listening. We were eating our blooming onion and our turkey leg. Well, we didn't get turkey legs. I forget what we got, but when I was overhearing those guys talking, it was funny. Initiative help action. I would love to meet some folks in the Ren Fest. Hasn't happened yet. I don't dress up though either. Maybe I should. I need to get it. I would, I would get an outfit. Something I would not have done some time ago, but I feel like if I could get the right outfit, I would dress up. Maybe I need what would be my Hext Press outfit for the Ren Fest? Hey, Michael Fraker, you were not pleased with your Ren Fest experience? All right, Michael, I don't want to get sidetracked, but please expound on your poor Ren Fest experience while I'm reading this next section. Okay, so you can give help in initiative action. Great. And you can crit success and crit fail in initiative. If you critical success, you get advantage on your first round, on any single check in your first round of combat. And if you crit fail, you go last. And basically you have advantage. Things have advantage against you. Interesting. So there's some risk there too. Okay, so we got that. I got that already. All right. I was trying to go initiatives, check sidebar. The checks used by the PCs as their initiative check don't have any mechanical in-game value and are used solely to determine their initiative order. A player describing their PC grabbing an enemy to start the fight could use an athletics check for their initiative check, but this roll does not count as a grapple. Okay, this is real. This is probably an important note, right? You can't double dip on your die rolling. Makes sense. Initiative order. Whoa. All right. So I guess you could get, I wonder if they will give you some kind of tracker, but so you kind of get a tracker here. I don't know I'm not sure what these mean. 1 1 2 2 3 3 4 4 5 5. What does that mean? I'm going to skip the tracker. Seems interesting, but I don't know what the colors are supposed. I guess the red is the enemies. Greens. Okay, that makes more sense. So we have. So I guess in this case, if I'm reading this correctly, in this case, you go through all the successful initiatives, then the failure initiatives, maybe, and then you'd go on, and then they give you the order. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In other words, PC team first, enemy team, PC team, enemy team, PC team, and then on the inverse on the other side. But did they roll those individually? I'm not sure exactly. To be honest, it doesn't matter to me that much. Oh, Michael Fraker says it felt like a themed outdoor mall we had to pay an arm and a leg to get into. I mean, I guess in a sense that is what it is. So Michael Fraker's talking about the Ren Fest. Ren Fests are kind of outdoor malls that you have to pay to get into, right? It's a bunch of stalls and shops and food places, but they do have shows. I find the shows, I really enjoy the shows. It's you go to the jousting and all the different things. We like the falconry. There's kind of a bird guy who comes. We'll go to that one. It used to be the Society for Creative Anachronism. And I don't know if they still exist. I know they had some issues, but the people who would do basically the kind of sort of pseudo actual weapon fights with the weapons wrapped in, their foam stuff, but they beat the heck out of each other and do things like that. I enjoy those, the kind of Robin Hood something going on and all that stuff. I really enjoy all the shows. But yeah, that's what it is. It's a bunch of shows, a cosplay, and a set of shops and things. So I guess if you don't dig it, then yeah, you could bottom line it too. It's an outdoor mall that you have to pay to get into. Over $100. Yeah, I don't know what the New York one is. The New York one I think is quite good. The Texas one I thought was very good too. It can be kind of pricey. They can't be, but you go, it's a once a year kind of thing. And I'm just sort of going past the simultaneous delayed initiative. That stuff's fine. I don't really, to be honest, I just don't It doesn't care that much to me. Let's see we have an example here for enemy groupings. Let's see. Example, there are 4 goblins with 1 hobgoblin boss and a combat encounter with 4 PCs. The GM might want to group up the 4 goblins together. Initiative order, then have his hobgoblin boss go next. Initiative order could look like this. Enemy team 1 initiative, 4 goblins, PC 1, PC 2, hobgoblin boss, PC 3, PC 4. Okay. Sure. So there's some ways of, so this initiative is a little bit more complicated than I guess I gave it credit for, because it seems like you're kind of doing this thing where you're kind of alternating. So in this case, if you had 2 enemy groups and the enemy team 1 initiative, then you do enemy group 1 first, then half the player groups, and then enemy group 2, then the other half. I feel like that's maybe a little bit more complicated than I personally would want, but sure. Sure. On the Renfest pricing, I feel you. It's expensive. For us, it's kind of a once in a year gig. So I think, we just kind of, I think if we look at it that way, and we do genuinely enjoy it, right? We spend all day. We don't usually buy much. I mean, we buy some food. We don't usually buy too much, and just really just enjoying being out in a nice place, watching all the stuff. But that's going to be your miles may vary. If you don't enjoy watching the stuff so much, or you don't dress up, or you don't enjoy seeing the people dressed up, I get a kick of seeing all the people dressed up and all that kind of thing. Then, yeah, the price may start to seem steep for what it is if you take away all the window dressing. Okay, so we have surprise, pre-comment image. Yeah, ambush is surprise. That's fine. All looks good. There's nothing on that other side. The one thing with having the pages big is I got to jump back and forth my leather mug collection. I have not a single leather mug. In fact, that metal mug from PAX is the only kind of real mug like that. I would like to get something. I'd like to get something. I don't know if I want a blade. I don't know what I want. And it's funny, one of my friends, who I now only see basically at the Renfest, manages several booths at the Renfest. And he's the guy I went to grade school with. And I don't know. I've never asked for a discount. I've never tried to buy anything. I would like to get something at the Renfest someday. But I just enjoy it. We just go and enjoy. So I went from coffee, which I finished off for the working man, to I don't know if this is going to do good for my stomach, but I'm doing it anyway. This is actually Trader Joe's seltzer water. This is their which one is this? This one's good too. I like these blood orange and orange juice. Blood orange combos I think are nice in the seltzers. So yeah, I have no commemorative Renfest mugs. I didn't even know there was such a thing. Oh, I'm gonna go see the corset merchant. I might have to. I mean, given my figure, I might need the corset. Okay, so we're into the environment here. So we're measuring distance in spaces, like on a grid map. 1 foot is roughly, okay, so hold on. A space, 5 feet or 1.5 meters. Okay, that's kind of all I need to know. Normal range of a longbow is 30 spaces. Just count 30 spaces. Great. Okay. We're using spaces. Difficult terrain. I think if you know 5th edition, I think you know difficult terrain. We've got jumping. So if I seem to be racing through these, I don't think it's probably I don't think it ultimately is important what the jumping mechanic is, but they have it. I don't know, and how do people feel about all these different movement mechanics? I would say that probably I feel like, again, I'm not interested in the particulars. I presume they're okay. I'm not going to quibble over what they are. Some people are very generous with how far you can jump. Some people less so. I tend to try to look up basically what I don't know if almost an Olympic jump thing is, and then say if that's your, say, whatever you base jumping on, say strength. That's kind of an 18 strength jump would be your kind of Olympic long jumper. Then I think you can kind of backtrack and say, oh, what would be about half that, and that would be your sort of strength 10. And you can kind of do some rough math, or you can just divide by 18, I suppose, something like that. Or you could make it a roll, whatever you want to do. I feel like jumping is probably something that I think should probably be in more core rules. just because it comes up a lot. I mean, one of the first things people are going to do when they're not just running is probably either climbing or jumping. So I'm certainly not suggesting that it's extra, but I don't need to read it. It's not ultimately not that important. Vertical reach, falling damage. How much is their falling damage? Creature falls from a height more than its agility in spaces and collides with the ground. An object or a creature, it takes true damage. So, I mean, I think that's bypassing armor, equal to the number of spaces it fell. All right. So, when a creature falls from a height more than its agility, so if you have 15 agility, then you could fall. That seems like a lot. From a height more than its agility. Oh, wait. You don't have. Wait. I think that like the numbers are very sorry. The numbers are actually quite small, right? It's like you have 3 agility. So 3 agility meaning you could fall 15 feet. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was thinking, D&D scores. Okay, we got some reduced impact. So if a PC has agility of 2 and falls from a height of 2 spaces, they take no damage. If the same PC falls from a height of 3 spaces, they take 3 true damage. Actually, I like that. The only thing the only thing, I guess the interesting thing here, right, is it's not a buffer. If you were able to make your jump only, so agility of 2 means you can fall 10 feet. So if you're able to mitigate your fall, so you only actually fall 10 feet, like you're able to tumble, grab onto things, whatever it is to try to get yourself so that your actual falling distance is 10 feet, then you're good. But as soon as you're more than your 15 feet, you take full damage, not 1 space worth of damage, which is kind of interesting. It's like you're either you're within your safe range, in which case you get nothing, or you get everything. I don't know if I love it or not, because it would make sense to me that if you're good at you're agile, so you're able to superhero land or land like a cat, whatever thing is to absorb damage, roll, that would actually help you mitigate falls that are longer. But here the answer is no. Hey, Magnus. Let's see. If you're falling intentionally or control your body and movement is considered a controlled fall, there are no. Okay. So, okay, that's for controlled fall. And then if you're uncontrolled impact, it gets even worse. All right. And we've got some climbing. If it's soft or mushy, it's +5. If it's wet or icy, it's +5. If it's flat, it's +10. If it's upside, what's flat? What is flat? Why would it be +10 if it's flat? I guess they mean smooth. That doesn't. It must mean a smooth surface. Sheer, maybe. Flat to me reads like you're Batman climbing from the old TV show where it's clear that they're on a horizontal plane and then turn it so that it's vertical. You ever see that? They ever see the old? Am I dating? Not that I was alive when the Batman TV show with Adam West came out, but it was lots of reruns, and you'd see these things like in the movie. I want to say Batman, the Batman like 1966, something like that movie. There's a point where I think it's in the movie where Batman's climbing the wall. He's climbing up the apartment building or brownstone or whatever, and then Jerry Lewis pops out the window. But it's clear that that he's walking up this sheer thing like this, and then Jerry Lewis pops out almost straight out 90 degrees to say like, "Oh, hey, Batman." And of course that sort of gives away the fact that they filmed it where Jerry Lewis is crouched down and standing up. Just kind of funny. They did not care about such things. They were it was campy purposefully. They knew, so having that kind of tell was just in line. Right, which is the new Batman movie went that way. I kind of dig that. I dug the new Batman movie. I mean, I don't have much skin in the game in terms of versions of Batman because I wasn't a Batman comic book fan. And here we have some swimming rules. We get some DC and more. Interesting here that DC is not based on their. Well, there's. I mean, I see they're not adding anything for wearing armor, but maybe there's. That doesn't matter too much. Maybe there's something different for that. Just based on the water at this point. I don't mind the new Batman movie, or I didn't mind it, but I don't. I just want a kind of an enjoyable movie. I have no. I don't have some kind of idea of what canon Batman is like or which version of Batman I like the best. It doesn't matter. Magnus says not a perfect movie, but they really liked it. Yeah, they call it Pat Bat. Terrence wants to know we're getting an ambush bug movie. I don't know. Okay, holding your breath, that's fine. Again, things that we have it, and there's a lot more detail here than maybe I need. So there's a stressed hold. So you can hold your breath, and then there's holding your breath while you're doing something. I think this is interesting because I see these things and like I mentioned about jumping, I think it's good to have because holding your breath tends to be something that is a nice thing to know about your core rules. If it's not an absolute core rule, it's kind of right past there on that periphery with things like jumping and climbing and things you can imagine your party having to do sooner rather than later, whether by accident, like they fall on or they're pushed or whatever happens into some kind of water filled pit or they're trying to swim across something. It seems to happen fairly often. If there's bodies of water or even just large enough containers of liquid, chances are someone's going to want to hold their breath inside, maybe to dive down and see if there's a treasure at the bottom of a pool or pond or fountain or something grabs them and tries to pull them in the water, whatever it happens. So I appreciate that. But then it's interesting how in some of these games, right, there's that extra layer of crunch, which I'm not necessarily expecting or think like, okay, this maybe is of less interest, like this stressed hold, right? Okay, so you can hold your breath for so long, but now if you're doing something strenuous, we have this other number. And I'm not saying it's bad because I think again, coming from the kind of fifth edition audience, it's probably your things that they want to know, but it's also that point where I go, okay, I don't know if I need that level of crunch. Because I could probably just figure that out on myself and just say, well, you're doing something strenuous, so it's half. Is that what they give? No, now you go from rounds. So instead of being in minutes, it goes to rounds, which is fine, I guess. Magnus likes this stuff, reminds him a bit of 3.5 edition. Yeah, I think for a lot of people, this is probably going to find a sweet spot maybe between, say, 5th edition, adding a little bit of crunch to 5e in certain places, but then some simplification in others. Like I think that Encounter DC is where they're doing a little bit of a simplification, but they're giving you some crunch here. At least in this case with the duration stuff, it's fairly easy to internalize, right? Because you go from, okay, if you can do it in minutes when you're just resting underwater, then it's in rounds when you're doing some strenuous. So it's pretty, I could see kind of, especially if this is a pattern that they use, regular or sort of at rest or whatever in minutes, and then strenuous in rounds. If that is kind of a pattern, then it's very easy to apply that pattern to many different things, such as being suffocated. Vision. All right, line of sight, half cover, three-quarter cover, full cover. Great. I'm not going to read through them, but those are kind of very much in the D&D vein. Concealment, partially concealed, fully concealed. Illumination. So we have 3 levels of illumination: bright light, dim light, and darkness. Anytime a light source produces bright light with a listed radius, then that sort of light also produces dim light that extends out an equal distance. Beyond the bright light, beyond the radius of dim light, there's only darkness unless there's another source of light illuminating the area. So these are things where I appreciate what they're trying to do. And I guess if you're using a VTT and you can have something set up, maybe you can do that in Roll20. Something where I know you can set light sources, and maybe you could set these kind of things like bright light, dim light. So you have, the brightest light and then some kind of shading, half shading in the dim light, and then just, fog of war outside it. But if I'm playing Theater of the Mind, and I don't know if they've said anywhere if this game just assumes you're playing with minis on a grid. Probably it is making that assumption, but I don't remember, so I'm not going to say for sure. But if you're playing Theater of the Mind, I feel like this is where it gets to be too much crunch. I want to track. I can just, if you're in dim light, I can look and say at the edge, I'll say something like at the edge of your lamplight or torchlight, you're seeing something moving around. I can kind of figure that out. I don't need to I don't really want to or need to keep kind of multiple circles of radii of light in my brain, especially when you start getting multiple light sources. That just becomes a ton. Okay, do 2 dim lights, they make it a bright light, like what and I suppose if I was going to have these in there, that I probably want to have abilities that trigger or have something on dim light, like a thief says, oh, in dim light I get advantage on whatever. So are they in dim light, are they in bright light? To me, it's probably a little bit too much kind of crunchy crunch that I'm looking at. Michael Fraker, you are welcome to make a suggestion for a future episode. Absolutely. Rune says Maymage is old, but this is too much granularity for me. Yeah, I'm probably in the same boat. Probably in the same boat. But I think there's probably a group of people who for this will be good because they'll, I do think there's some folks out there who really appreciate having it spelled out, right? To say this is bright, this is dim, this is dark, and they can look at it and there's the authority of the rules they can point at and say here it is, and they can lay down their templates. They're using virtual templates in a VTT or real templates and whatever. Here's this, here's dim, here they go. And I think they like having that specificity. And I think there are those of us who are probably, I'm in that boat of I don't mind having the specificity. Sometimes that is good, but most of the time is give me loosey goosey. And then if it comes up a bunch, then you turn that ruling into a rule and you say, okay, always this thing. But other than that, I'm just going to kind of, if I feel like it's in dim light, if it makes sense to me in the context that is dim light, then I'll just call it dim light. I don't need to do a whole bunch of measurements. I'll just look out and say, okay, it's about 35-ish feet away. So you can kind of see it. I don't use, it's just not like a hard cutoff. If I were to have something on a map, let's say in front of me, maybe not in front of the players, and I was counting out squares and somebody's at 35 feet and your torch goes out to 30 feet, it's not darkness, right? In my mind, there's some kind of, yes, the light decaying or the light dimming, and you have that kind of dim area. But I don't need to be mechanically rigid in what defines that space. And none of my players are looking for that kind of rigidity either. However, if we were using all the tools in the VTT, then maybe it would just be there for us if we would just use it. Or like I said, if things mechanically count on it, if it were important to players that a creature be in dim light so that they could use shadow step, then I could see wanting to be more more specific and have kind of a rule about it because it really it matters. That comes down to that kind of, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like, if we're going to have this dim light area, what does that dim light area actually do? What's gameable about having the dim light area, as opposed to it being something where I just described there being less detail unless the party moves up, which kind of is gameable, but doesn't need to be specific. Aaron says they're too scatterbrained to use VTTs. And the room says, yeah, I think the light distinctions are cool, but I don't need the exact radius stuff. Yep. 3 shades is fine. Yeah, totally. Like, I'm all for saying like, oh yeah, get into a dim area, but yeah, I don't need it all spelled out. So now we have dark vision. So here where it's kind of being mechanized, right? So dark vision, a creature with dark vision can see areas of dim light as if they were bright light, and see areas of darkness as if they were dim light. So there you're seeing at least something that's kind of gameable, right? Yet again, do I feel like I need that? No, because if I was talking about the guy who's at 35 feet, seeming kind of shadowy figure, and someone's like, hey, I got dark vision, what do I see? I would just, give it to them. So it's not a distinction that I necessarily need, but at least we're getting into, okay, here's some way where we're mechanizing those distinctions in a way. And again, I feel like some of the stuff is almost, if it's not designed for VTTs, it feels like it's really well suited to it, where in theory, and I don't know exactly because I'm not playing on any VTTs, but that you could have something set up where a certain character, maybe as they see the board, could see that if something's marked as being dim light, then if their character has dark vision, the things get checked and they get to see more of the board than somebody else who only has regular vision. Tremor sense, okay, blind sight, true sight, that's all really close to kind of D&D-isms. That's fine. Creatures in combat, so we have creature sizes. This is something I always end up porting some version of this to my old school games because I like them. I don't, I think like a lot of things here, this gets a little more granular than I feel like I need, which is micro, tiny, small, medium, large, huge, gargantuan, colossal, titanic. I think I end up having like one for micro, tiny, small, one for kind of medium, and then maybe 2 for this area, maybe large and huge. Whoops, large and huge would be about the same. Anyway, they definitely get more. I don't know if I think of a sheep as small. Have you seen some sheep? So small and medium seem to be about the same. They both take up a space. So I don't know what the distinction then between small and medium really is in that sense. Is there some kind of... That's interesting. Small, 1 space, medium, 1 space. So why isn't small and medium the same? Orga says that the font looks like D&D. Well, they're trying to... I think a lot of things look vaguely D&D-ish. Their call-outs. I mean, it's very well laid out. I have no issues with it. And they're going for a D&D type look, which again makes sense. They are targeting D&D folks. So formatting their document in a way that's going to feel very comfortable and like a known quantity to folks who've been used to reading D&D 5th edition books. A great move. It would have been more weird, I would imagine, if they had gone with a totally different format. Unless they'd found something that they thought was just much better than the way 5e does it. And I'm not saying that 5e does it the best, but I've never gotten super confused at the layout of a 5th edition book. So they got to be doing something okay. Creatures of different size have bonuses or penalties when attempting to grapple, push, move, and knock other creatures prone. Okay. So basically, I guess the deal here is that where this size matters, small to medium, is I guess if you're human, you get advantage in trying to push over a sheep. Whoops, why do I keep doing that? Or I guess I'm surprised they didn't use kind of dwarf or something in here. But, you know. Okay, we do have micro creatures. That's fine. Moving and grappling, great. Moving through creatures, collision with creatures. Example, a creature is knocked back 5 spaces and impacts a wall that's only 2 spaces away. That creature will be thrown 2 spaces into the wall, then take 3 bludgeoning damage for the 3 spaces they couldn't be moved. That's cool. I mean, that's, you know, do we need this? Not necessarily, but this is something I think that I actually like that they have in here because it's something that comes up, again, fairly often, especially if you want to play monsters as doing things like you want the big giant to grab somebody and throw them against the wall. You can kind of give them some kind of knockback attack, and then this totally makes sense. His knockback was 5 spaces, but you can only move 2 away. So what do? You get the rest in damage. Bada bing, bada boom. Brian Smith says, so I don't need to take the sheep toppler feat. No, what do they call it? Like a, what was it? Like a no tipping? No sheep tipping, no sheep tip feat. Sheep shover. There you go. Okay. Falling attacks, throwing. You could throw creatures. That's cool. So you can toss the dwarf if you'd like. You can throw objects, throw melee weapons, improvised weapons. Unarmed strikes deal 1 damage. There you go. Non-lethal attacks. You can declare to be non-lethal. That's the standard. Magnus says that's an handy and easy rule to remember. Like it a lot. Yeah, I could totally see porting that over, right? If you give something some kind of push or shove attack that's X amount of squares or feet, just, dividing by 5 to get your squares. If they can't move because they're obstructed, then they take the damage for the amount of squares that they couldn't move, the amount of 5-foot increments they couldn't move. What will be interesting is what do you do when they land on another person? That might be the other. That might be the. I think they probably mentioned it up there, and I just bypassed it. Says it's like the Far Side comic. The cow restaurant had no tipping policy. Womp womp womp. Yeah. Magnus says they find themselves warming up to this system. Can't afford to back another Kickstarter right now, but they can see themselves trying to convert their friends to this. Well, look, I mean, the one thing, Magnus, if you feel like your friends might be into it, this is the this is a free. You can grab this free, right? And this is a fairly beefy book. I'm not sure if this is a beta. I think it's kind of a beta version, but I would say this is certainly playable to start, and then you can play it. And then if your friends really get into it, then maybe you guys can split the books, or you can save up a couple bit and get the books. That's what's great about all these systems that basically put out free versions of their rules, is you really get to kind of try them before you buy them. I mean, that was always the problem up until fairly recently, right? Is you had to invest in the books and then try it. And then if you didn't like it, you just had some books on your shelf, like a lot of us. Oh, I didn't really like it, but it's on my shelf. Or maybe you could sell it. Obviously, once you get into the internet age, you could probably eBay it or whatever. It might just go to half price books or something like that. But nowadays, download this, run it. I mean, I can't imagine there's much in here you're missing if you just want to feel like it's got everything covered pretty much. So give it a run. If it's got a little rough edges here and there, just go in understanding it's a beta rule set and then see what happens. 3 words every man loves to hear. This is free. Yep, this is free. Speaking of free, did anyone get anything on roll RPG day? I was out of town. I was up in the country, so there was no RPG, no friendly local gaming stores to go to get anything. So I missed it, unfortunately, but hopefully some of you guys made out good. All right, we have dual wielding. Well, how do they do it? When you're wielding a light weapon in each hand, no weapons or some combination of either, you're considered to be dual wielding. While dual wielding, when you make an attack with one hand followed by a second attack with the other hand, the second attack ignores the multiple check penalty. Okay. You can do this one way per turn. So I guess if you want to have two weapons. Oh, and here's a tip. If you have mastery with light shields, you can use a light shield in place of a light weapon for purposes of dual wielding. So you do the kind of buckler sword thing. I guess you get to bump people with your shield. With that, I guess. Oh, Michael Frege, that's a bummer. Went to two different ones and neither one were doing anything. Man, that's rough. Yeah, I guess some of them aren't. Or I know some of them. I saw someone posted somewhere that they went to one and it was something like they would give it to you, but only if you bought $20 or more of stuff. And I get it in the sense that look, we're trying to drum up business, but at the same time, that's kind of the idea that free RPG days, you just get some free stuff, and maybe someone doesn't have $20 they can spend on the hobby, so they get some freebies. Then gating them behind a purchase is kind of missing the point a bit. But I know it's also tough for a lot of local gaming stores, so I kind of see both sides. Okay, so you get some flanking, +2, hidden creatures, unseen. I still don't get it where people don't play with flanking in their games, but I'm not going to go on I wouldn't even call it a rant. I feel like people give away flanking too easily, and therefore that's why they get rid of it. But I think flanking should be pretty hard to get. And if it is hard to get, then I think it's okay to keep it. But Magnus says kind of sus, as the kids say. Yeah, a little bit. All right. Unheard. Yeah, you're silent, right? No one hears you. You're hidden. Underwater combat. All right, so what do they have for underwater combat? So you get disadvantage on martial attacks. You got to hold your breath, assuming you're not have water breathing. And then fire resistance for anything that's fully immersed. That makes sense. Okay, so weapons. I'm really going to drift by these. There looks like they have some tags. Some weapons are threatening, which doesn't mean what you think it might mean. It means that you provoke opportunity attacks when you make an attack with the weapon. I don't know if I would use the word threatening. I feel like that's threatened. Or maybe I would say you're, what's the word I'm looking at? You're vulnerable when you're doing that. We've got some special weapons. Is there a table here? I just kind of want to see the table to see which things are threatening. What is threatening? Out of curiosity. I don't see. Threatening. Where's threatening? It's got to be a bow, I imagine. There it is. Yep, if you're using a bow or a great bow. Okay, so Rune, going back to that disadvantage. Let's go back quickly. Okay, so we're talking. This was about the. Here we go. Dual wielding. When you're wielding a light weapon in each hand, no weapons or some combination of either, you're considered to be dual wielding. Yep, I guess that would be so. But you're making it so basically it would only be if you're attacking twice. So I guess it kind of makes sense. You're using your hand. You're using both hands. I'll give it to you. So yeah, they're kind of giving you that, which is kind of cool if you want to be. I don't, I mean, if you're a fighter type, I guess it means if you're kind of a thief type and you just have your dagger, that's kind of cool. You get a little extra juice. You can kind of punch somebody, or maybe it's an excuse. Maybe you get some knuckle dusters or what do you call brass knucks or something. I mean, yeah, okay. So Rune says, I think you changed the name of dual wielding. I don't know what you call it because it's basically you just consider that you're maybe it's a dual attacks. I don't know. Yes, it's because you're basically wielding your fist in one hand, weapon in the other. I don't have a problem with it. I don't know if you need to. I don't know if I would say you need to rename it. You just got to internalize that if you're using your fist as a weapon, then you're wielding it, right? I think once you kind of get over maybe a little bit of confusion at the start, I feel like it's pretty sensible. And actually, it's kind of a nice thing if you think about it. Like if you're a thief, or you want to wear, you want to just have one weapon and not have a shield, you kind of get something similar. Now, you're obviously you would always want to attack Well, I guess it doesn't matter, right? Because it's just that your second attack doesn't get that multi-action penalty. So it really doesn't matter whether you punch first or. I guess I'd always want to do my weapon first because if I might kill something, I want to make sure to kill it and not do 1 point of damage and then hope I can kill it later. So I'd always want to lead with the weapon. But I suppose though, Rune, it's balanced by the fact that the best case scenario is on that second attack, you do 1 point of damage. So unless you think that something is really close to being knocked out, it's probably not a good use of your time to just attack with your fist, but you can. Magnus says you need to have some obstructions in the environment to make flanking more challenging when it comes to bigger boss monsters and such. Their group used to run circles around dragons. Yes, though I would also say, Magnus, that your dragon probably shouldn't be sitting in a spot where they get easily surrounded. If your dragon's getting, if the dragon, see what ends up happening in these kind of situations, I think, is that often the dragon or whatever it is just kind of comes and flies and lands in front of the party, and then everyone goes, blah, 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 blah. They shouldn't be landing. I mean, you should be having to force the dragon to land through something. Either you're able to knock it out of the sky with some kind of excellent attack, something like that. That dragon should be coming through and strafing, and just strafe attack, and flying off and away. Do something about that. And then if it's a lair situation, then yes, it should have its lair should be constructed in such a way that you don't get to just surround it. Even if it's on its hoard, then maybe it's difficult terrain or it's slippery because you're on gold pieces and things, and it's the ground shifts below, or there's stalactites, stalagmites. Maybe there's a narrow opening that the dragon kind of gets you guys coming through. I think what ends up happening is, though, too much, you just get an open space, and the big creature just kind of plops down in the middle of the space, and then everyone just runs around going blah, 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 blah. And it shouldn't be like that. I mean, if that happens to the monster, that monster should be trying to get away at all speed. If it looks like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to get trapped, I'm looking around and these guys are just going to surround me and beat the crap out of me, then that's not a winning situation. The monster should be able to see that and be like, nope, I'm out of here. I'm not hanging around for that. Ruin commenting thing on the dual attack. No, it's you can't sword you have empty hand, sword and then your hand. So it's it is dual wielding in the fact that I think people say you're wielding your fist. I'm okay with that. You're wielding a shield. I'm okay with that. So I get the dual wielding part. And then for the fist, who's going to want to do that? Use an attack to do that fist again, because it's not effective. But you get to get the option. No worries about the diversion. That's what we're here. We're here to walk and talk through stuff. Okay, so we have reskinning weapons. That's a nice note, right? This is something that people get a lot of. Oh, I want to having to talk to your GM about reskinning this or that. I mean, it's something that comes up in advice all the time. So it's nice that they just put it in the book. Armor bonuses. So depending on your quality, you might get a bonus. So you don't have to be necessarily magic armor. It can be expertly made armor, and you get a nice +3. We have armor types: light armor, heavy armor, no medium armor. What's chainmail? Is that heavy or light? And you can also get some so you can have some other adjustments. Your light armor could be reinforced, could be sturdy, or sturdy and reinforced. But you do lose some agility. And then we have heavy armor, can be reinforced, dense, or both. So lots of different types of armor. Shields, you got bucklers, round shields, kite shields. Wow, you could throw your shield. Well, I guess if you want to be Captain America, you can do it. Do it. Attacking with shields. So again, if you attack with a shield, you have mastery with, you only do 1 bludgeoning damage. So you can do that. So I get really annoyed with people like, I want to do like a dual wielding shields and then do double attacks with the shields. Well, at least this system's like, great. You can make those double attacks with your shields. You're getting 1 damage. And they both have to be light shields. So, haha to you if you thought you were going to get one over. We have first aid kits, healing potions. I almost never have healing potions in my games. I just don't like them. I understand the necessity for stuff of that, but I like to do other things, rituals, uh, healing herbs, things like that, not just like swig down a potion. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a curmudgeon like that. All right, we get a bunch of conditions. You're on death's door, you kind of get doomed, and you get a number, I guess. You can also have an exhaustion number. You could be bleeding, you could be blinded, you could be burning, charmed, dazed. These I always like, though. You can end up in a situation, I think that often happened to us in fourth edition when I played in a group that was playing that, in which we were using, which I thought was a good idea on our part, using poker chips for conditions. And you can end up on a nice little stack of poker chips between and maybe difficult terrain was one, or maybe kind of and grappled. Prone, we usually just put the base on the side so it's laying flat for prone. But you can ever have a bunch of them, and it becomes can be a little bit confusing. I almost wish we had a few. Like I think Morg Borg has something like that where it only has a couple of conditions. They're pretty bad, but you just flick on that condition, and I like it because you just internalize that one thing. Your condition is, kind of like the condition is you are screwed. When you are screwed, you are dying, and this, that, and the other. And maybe it doesn't necessarily a perfect match for everything, but it just kind of it fits, right? Oh, you're screwed, so you can only move a quarter of a distance, and your armor class is 10, and whatever, right? You got to make a save every round, otherwise you're dead, something like that. And it's like, well, great. Well, you just have this screwed condition, and hey, if this happens, you're screwed. Or no, I think in Morkboard they might call it broken. You are broken, and maybe it's not always a perfect fit, but it just kind of works because everyone can just kind of see that broken, or if you, the referee, the GM, could just know what broken is, and then you just apply it, and that's great. And I can see having maybe 2 or 3. I don't need 12. Here, you got a bunch: intimidated, rattled, restrained, taunted. Like, whoo, that's a lot. And I'm sure that there are you could have attack, you could have abilities, things that go over those, but I don't need it. Like, what's like rattled and taunted to me could just be the same. They may not mean exactly the same thing, but they probably are. So taunted, I guess this is supposed to, yeah, that doesn't say what it does. It's just like, here's the name of it, but whatever it does is probably based on whatever it's doing. I assume that if the ranger taunts you, you want to go attack the ranger. I don't know, but rattled probably would just make sense. I don't know. I just don't need that many. Don't need that many. Oh, Room says surprised they don't see more Bane fighters with the big backpack tanks of healing potions or those beer hats potions. I think I've seen something with the Pons made like some jokes with the beer hat with potions in it. But yeah, Bane type thing, or Immortan Joe, where they're breathing in some kind of healing gas. Where are those guys? That's probably happened. I just probably missed it. All right, so we have resting. So we have rest points. So equal to your level. And then we have different activity types: no activity, light activity, strenuous activity, dangerous activity. Like I said, I probably don't need all those. I think we can probably ideas like, hey, what counts as light activity, strenuous? So some of these are interesting, right? So strenuous activity requires physical exertion, such as traveling, hunting, or exercising, training, or casting spells. A dangerous activity is one that can cause extreme injury or stress. But what's funny is that if you're hunting, you could potentially be engaging in combat with a hostile creature, but it doesn't count as that. Like, this is probably where, again, for me, I probably don't need those two types. Like, I would just say that dangerous and strenuous are basically one and the same. It's strenuous, I guess, which could be just potentially dangerous, because any of those could be potentially dangerous, except for maybe exercising. I suppose it depends on your type of exercise, but I think you get what I mean. I think you get what I'm saying. All right, so we have a quick rest, right? A short rest and a long rest. So we're 5e type stuff. Nice little graphic here. You can also have half a long rest, and then you spend rest points. What are you spending your rest points on? Okay, so it's kind of like what you spend your hit dice on, I guess, in sort of 4th ID stuff. You can basically spend rest points to regain hit points. So there you go. Oh, I got to sneeze here. Excuse me. Okay. Fine. DCs. So we're setting DCs by 5s, which makes sense because you're using a D20, and that basically each face of a D20 is 5% chance. 5 is very easy up until 30, which is near impossible. Great success and great failure. Basically, if you beat the check by 5 or failed the check by 5, basically a way of doing graduated success and failures, which I like to do. And so they're basically standardizing, which is nice. I do that a lot with my when I'm having D20 type rolls. I'll do something like I'll have I don't like to use I've kind of fallen away. I don't have a big problem with it, but like the 20 as your crit, because it doesn't scale, which is something you may like, you may not like. I kind of like it scaling a little bit. So I might say a critical attack, a critical success on an attack isn't that you roll a 20, it's that you beat the armor class by 10. And that to me rewards particularly fighters who are going to get those pluses, those get the best modifiers to their attack bonus. They're more likely to roll 10 or over. For other classes, they're not. And they might not even be able, depending on what they're fighting, they might not even be able to crit on a 20, which I'm fine with myself. Advantage, different disadvantages, complications. This is all good. Fairly standard. Okay, into the Game Master Guide. Okay, when your GM tells you to, quote, make an athletics check, that'll most likely be based off of your might attribute. When your GM tells you to make an influence check, that'll most likely be based off your charisma attribute. It's interesting that why they phrase it here still from the character's point of view when we're from the GM's point of view. So that example should probably be rephrased so that, we're in the Game Master's Guide, so it should be when you tell your player you're mean, whatever. But I think I get what they're saying. So essentially, if you want to use, this was the thing that I thought in the first one that in their first half that they did, that 5th edition kind of has in the game in their Dungeon Master's Guide. But I think this one didn't have at the time this idea of you can use different skills for different checks. So even though an athletics check, you might mostly be there might be a case where you could make an athletics check and you need to use your agility instead. And influence might be over charisma, but it might be over, I forget if they have a wisdom attribute, but it might be over a different, or their intelligence. You could see some different cases for that. And so they're kind of keeping that, which is good. And they have some examples, which I'm going to skip over. 10-step character creation outline. Step 1, all right, I'm definitely going to skip over this, but we get some nice steps. I like this. I'm not sure why it's here. I would have put this with more of the stuff that I see as player facing, but it doesn't matter ultimately. All right, so you're going to get your attributes in Prime. Going to do, right, they got different things. Save your masteries, get your background, skills, health points, stamina, mana points, defense, and then combat modifiers, ancestry. Okay, so you pick your ancestry kind of late. I don't think I got time to do a live character creation today, Magnus. I'll see. I'll put up a little poll after this is over, and if folks want to do a character, we can. I'll leave it for that. Progression. It's kind of just summarizing what we saw before. Whoops, what's this? Leveling up, additional options. All good. Talents. When a PC is granted a talent, they can spend on any talent. Okay. I always, please don't name things the same thing. Maybe call it a talent point. When a PC is granted a talent point, they can spend on any talent that they meet the requirements for. Something like that. Please don't use the same word. If you get a talent, you can spend it on talent. Okay. An example, a paladin at 2nd level could use the talent they get to gain a general talent, a paladin class talent, or a multi-class talent. Excellent. So general talents, anybody can do. Could be an attribute, could be basically increase in your stuff, could be a spell casting, expand your spell casting, expand your martial prowess, expand your ranged precision. Oh, that's actually, sorry, this is martial expansion. It's not something you can raise. That's just a thing. And so spell casting. So those are all just things you can do once. You can also multi-class. These talents represent the multi-classing system in DC20. These talents allow you to take features from other classes outside of your own. The feature you gain from this talent will be of a lower level than your own class, but allow you to pick up powerful abilities from other classes and even subclasses if you meet the requirements. Class flavor features. You aren't able to select a class's flavor feature with a multi-classing talent, but once you take two class features from a single class, you automatically gain that class's flavor feature. This represents your PC becoming more like that class with the flavor features helping along. All right, so that's I'm not going to go back and read what the flavor features are. This is the 4th edition model of multi-classing, where you're not getting everything out of the class. Like 5th edition, you're a 3rd level rogue, and you pick 1st level fighter. You just get the 1st level fighter, right? And then you can level them up however you want. In 4th edition, you would get essentially pick up a feat that was fighter, I'm going to take this fighter multi-class feat, and you get a kind of a limited bit of that fighter. Wouldn't give you everything, you get this limited piece. This is doing a bit of that with a bit of the other one. So I don't think in 4th edition they had a thing where you you might be able to stack it, but there was nothing that they didn't have this bit about I don't remember there being a kind of a flavor feature. Get two class, multi-class twice and get a free flavor feature. I don't think they did that, if I'm recalling, but that's how they did it. So the advantage of the other approach, obviously, is you get to mix and match your classes however you want, and then just how many times you take that other class you'll unlock features as you go in. This one is a bit more, maybe a little bit easier to manage and balance, in the sense that you can literally say, here's what you're getting and here's what you're not getting, and it has maybe a little bit more niche protection in that you might have a feature that's just fighter only, and you can multi-class the fighter all you want, you're not getting that feature. Or maybe in this case, maybe they're saying you have to at least take it 3 times, another third, was it twice? 2 times, and you get it on that one. So you're going to kind of limit stuff. Now, the flip side is that you do miss out a little bit on that I can be anything out of anything kind of thing. If that makes sense. Okay. And then we have different, depending on how many times you take it, you can choose different things. Oh, they have a prestige system. Nice. Oh, okay, hold on a minute. In DC20, there are 2 more advanced systems, so you can have multi-class. Just a full out. So you don't have to do the kind of talent multi-classing. I guess you could do a true multi-classing also. They should probably give those separate terms, maybe. You can gain features from other classes by selecting the multi-class talents listed on the talents chapter. When you do, follow the rules for multi-classing. Oh, I guess it's the same. Never mind. I guess it's just more of this same thing. When a martial class spends a talent on a multi-classing talent, please, to pick up a feature from a spellcasting class, they also gain multi-class spellcasting mastery. Gain additional benefits as you continue to spend more talents to gain more spellcaster class features. These don't have to be from the same spellcasting class as the first one. Okay, so you can they have a multi-class spellcasting mastery. That seems a little bit complicated. Magnus says that Worlds Without Number kind of does that. Gish classes get a lot of benefits of the 2 classes they mix, but if he's recalling correctly, you don't advance either one as far as you could with a single class build. That's true. I mean, that is the same as D&D is the same way, right? You can't become 20th level multi-class. You can become 19-1, 18-2, right? Something like that. So the more multi-classing you do lose those, what they call them, the capstones, and then the high level ones. So there is a balance there. But this is kind of, if you're doing the one with the feats, you actually aren't losing your progression in your original class. You get a talent at 4th level when you're leveling up the fighter, you take this multi-class feat, it's not like you've gone up fighter 3, wizard 1, you're still fighter 4, but you now have this multi-class talent. So it's a little bit different way of doing it. When you want to continue your PC's level progression past 10th level, you maintain your original class but gain a prestige path. This lets you increase your PC to 20th level. When your GM says you're now 11th level, you get a few extra features listed below based on the prestige path that you choose. Okay, so they got some prestige pathing. And then we got some leveling chart. So character level. So you get a whole bunch of talents and then an epic boon at 20. Martial path. I guess that's the prestige path for martial classes, or you can pick that if you want. And the spellcaster path, you get more. And then there's a hybrid path, which I guess you're mixing spellcasting and martial. Now they have an ancestry system. You got during character creation, you must choose your character's ancestry, which represents the physical form your character takes in the world. Let's see. Your character, such as human, elf, dwarf, halfling, and gnome, each ancestry has a list. Oops, hold on a second. Has a list of ancestry traits, which you can gain by spending an ancestry point. So you got ancestry traits, ancestry points, gaining ancestry points. I almost feel like, is that what Shadow of the Demon Lord was, where you basically just get it? You just kind of get up to levels. Does that ring a bell for anybody? I'm trying to remember. I kind of feel like there's a lot of points here. A lot of different points, traits and points, and I might feel like, I mean, I guess that's just where my, like, is there a way to do this in a lighter way kind of comes into play with, like, hey, can we just do this in a, maybe do this in a little bit of lighter function? Okay, ancestry flavor, what it looks like, ancestry lore and flavor, ancestry creation, base speed. I'm really just kind of curious, is kind of what these traits, the ancestor things look like. Okay, hold on. There's a point here about if you're doing stronger or weaker ancestries. Game masters can choose to start the game off with higher, lower ancestry point totals. So basically, you started with normally 5, but you can have lower or higher. If you want to give your players more power and customization, you can give them more. Okay, well, that's kind of nice. Oh, Ian actually leveled their cleric. Nice. With a multi-class talent. So what did you multi-class your cleric into? All right, so humans. So let's look at again. I just want to look at a couple of these. So human default traits, you get an attribute increase. It's like the D&D model. Resilience, human resolve, and then undying. And their expanded traits are skill expertise, trade expertise, human determination, and unbreakable, like Kimmy Schmidt. And then, oh, interesting. You get one of the expanded traits is an attribute decrease. I'm not sure why you want to do that unless you just have to. Is that kind of like you're getting older? Is that what that's supposed to reflect? Oh, Paladin Divine Smite. Nice. That makes sense for a cleric. I really feel like just clerics and paladins should just be the same. Just one class. That's basically cleric, paladin, paladin, just paladin. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. What did I see here? It's a restrictive flying ancestry trait. So this is an alpha rule. There will be ancestries that can fly in future alpha updates. I'm being very careful in this implementation for the balance of the game, since flying PCs can cause problems. There will be options in the base game for this, but this variant rule will have a more restrictive set of ancestry traits that give flying, but in a progression extending towards later levels. Okay. I'm not anti-flight myself. I know that people can up in arms, but flying to me is a lot like flanking. I feel like people give it more passes than they need to. In my mind, in almost every dungeon, you're not flying anywhere. There's nowhere to fly. You don't have the room to fly. The rooms aren't big enough to fly. You're not getting anywhere inside of dungeons. So if you're doing dungeon delving, the flying character gets really nothing out of it. Out of that. If you're outside, sure, the flying character can fly around, but they only fly themselves. They're not flying. It's not group flight. They're flying, and if they're flying 60 feet up in the air and someone takes a pot shot at them with a crossbow bolt or an arrow and hits them, then they're plummeting 40 feet to the ground. They're probably dead. And while they can do things, like, yes, scout ahead and stuff like that's great. Scout ahead, scout all you want. But I'm not afraid of them. But I also understand that a lot of people, especially if you go more or less by the book, because one of the things that I like to do, right, is I'll give monsters, just about any intelligent kind of monster is going to have some kind of missile weapon. But I understand that by the book, a lot of the lower levels do not have it. Like a goblin doesn't have a bow and arrow. I don't even know if they even have a spear. Maybe they do. They are limited weapons. And I know you can do the things marksman and whatever. And so this guy's hovering 200 feet away and he's taking pot shots at you and you can't even see him. But by the same token, if I'm playing intelligent enemies and they're getting pot shot like the snipers 200 feet away, takes one of them out, they're getting cover. They're going for cover. They're getting out of there. They're not going to sit there and just get pot shot. And then what do you do when there's any kind of cover? Hills, forests, fog, smoke. I'm not saying that they don't have advantages to be flying. That's fine. It's kind of supposed to give you an advantage. I mean, there'd be no reason to have the thing at all if it didn't give you any kind of advantage. But I'm not afraid of it, or I'm not worried about it as a GM, because there are very many countermeasures I can have. And if there are Arakocra that are running around in the game because there are PCs, there have to be other NPCs that are Arakocra. There has to be Arakocra places, and there has to be whatever. Then there will be flying creature countermeasures. Not to mention that, like I don't remember really having a run game, a session or a part of a session where everybody was flying, but say at least the OD&D way as interpreted by Daniel, when you are flying, you started having to roll on the sky random encounter list. And that list is not a nice list. So you go up there flying 200 feet away. Okay, let's roll to see if you have a wandering encounter in the sky. You don't want that list. You want no part of whatever's that list. So, Rune says they're not a big fan of how cosmopolitan the ancestor system is, like having 20 races as a core and having the ability to mix like giant plus dwarf. Yeah, I mean, yes, of course, setting to suit, right? I haven't necessarily played in a game or really wanted to play a game with that. I kind of tend to agree. I like it a little more pared down, but it'd be like if I was playing Star Wars game, right? There is the kind of cantina stuff of Star Wars where all these people are intermixing, or the Forgotten Realms, whatever. So yes, I agree with you. That's my taste, but I think given if we're playing with it, I think the only thing I would like is I just don't like where people believe that, or have this belief that if it's in the books, you got to play it. I played in a campaign, someone run that was all dwarves. So like, I want you guys to be the 7 fathers of dwarves. And I was like, great. And like, we're playing as dwarves. That's the game. And I think the same thing you want to do humans or whatever, or, whatever species you want to pick. It shouldn't be like, because it's in the rule book means that you must allow it, or otherwise you're a horrible GM. Epic of Dreams. Hey, Drew says, do I think the DC20 has weight to it? What do I like so far? It's definitely, so I would say that this game has got, it's 5th edition kind of based, if we want to say what the chassis most resembles. 5th edition, pulling in some bits of 3.5, adding a little bit of crunch from 3.5. There's some 4th edition stuff they brought in, kind of different 4th edition stuff than 5th edition brought in itself. Some things I see from something like, say, Index Card RPG, some bits to kind of smooth things out. I would say probably on the whole, it's maybe slightly crunchier than 5e, though maybe some of the crunch is in different places. And I think they've put some things in there to maybe smooth out the experience a little bit more, so you might not feel the crunch so much. Too early to say whether I think if they got out of, or if they if the things that they've done where I feel like they're trying to smooth it out, right? How much that works? Does it succeed at making some of the crunch easier? Because I think what happens in 5th edition, you have all these rules, and I think if you just look at the base rules by themselves, I think they're pretty. I don't think it's a bad rule set, but then the system, and 5th edition not alone in this, is kind of this exception-based system, right? The specific piece of general. So we're gonna have all these general rules, and then we're gonna have a lot of these specific things that kind of beat them, and then we're gonna have these kind of meta currencies. We're not gonna really call them meta currencies, but they're kind of what they are. So you have one reaction, you have one free action, you might have some other kind of just like a feature kind of action, which you just, and then it's like, oh, but if I do this, but I can't, I can do this free action, but no, did I use my reaction already? And you're kind of spending these different things, and then, does this override that, this, or who gets that one, that? And that can be, and I think that's where a lot of the arguments and table talk, I think it's, for me anyway, tends to come in, with either the interactions between these different things where these things are all colliding together, and then also maybe on some of the rules interpretation, letter of the law versus maybe what the designers might write. That was it words as written, right, or rules as written versus rules as intended kind of thing. I think there's 2 elements. I can't say whether they've simplified, whether some of that stuff that they've managed to smooth out. Because if I were making a 5e like for 5e players, that's what I'd probably want to target, is how can I smooth out a bunch of those rough edges to kind of eliminate as much as possible all that dithering and, well, did that use up my reaction? Or, oh, this stinks because I have to use reaction to do that. And so I don't do that. And that's a class feature. So I don't want to have to choose between using my class feature or doing the block as a reaction, all that kind of stuff. The other part, I think, where the rules is written versus rules is intended, maybe that's a nut that you can't even crack. That's kind of a community thing. There's nowhere in the book that says you should make judgments over whether it's rules is written or rules intended. No, that's just something that I think that's a people issue that needs to be kind of figured out at the community level. But that other stuff, I think that's where I would want to look at. I don't know whether it's gone there or not, but if you're looking 5th edition and thinking, man, they cut out a little bit too much of the crunch in places I like, this might give it to you. And maybe if you felt like when you get in some of that crunch that it's not as consistent, maybe this is more consistent. Can't say for sure because I haven't tried to build anything or play anything. Ian here, who has some actual experience as opposed to me, says it feels crunchier at level 1 as a level 1 comparison, but I think the complexity might not increase into higher levels as much as 5th edition. The complexity seems very front loaded, whereas 5e starts off fairly simple. That's going to be interesting, and I'll be interested to see how people take that. I think sometimes it's good to front load everything. That can also be kind of scary for people, whereas when you get to kind of wade in, and it's sort of the complexity is brought on under time. You don't have to try to understand everything at once. You can understand little bits. And you just have to understand a few more bits and a few more bits. And that's kind of the BX. That was kind of, I think, one of the brilliance of taking the, white box D&D and through, it's kind of basic to expert, right? Is we're going to start you off with a subset of the rules with a subset of levels. And you just got to learn that. And then once you learn that, then we can tack on the expert set. And obviously the BECME was the whole, them trying to do that all the way through, which I think with mixed success. But this idea of we're going to compartmentalize some of the stuff. So you don't have to learn everything at once. Just learn these bits. Just learn how to get to the dungeon, which is easy. Okay, now you want to go cross country. Okay, now you get the cross country bits. Oh, now you want to start, doing this other bit. Okay, now you're kind of do that. So they could kind of nurse you along. I'm not sure which one ultimately is better, but they are definitely different approaches. Magnus likes the cut or crunch of its jib. And Rune says, they wonder if you can get the reaction Congo lines, like 20 monsters reaction reacting to each other's reactions. Yeah, unknown if you can or not. So I did want to look at one of these. Let's look at one of these. Oh, so let's look at gnomes. Gnomes don't get talked about a lot. I don't have the hatred for gnomes that some people do. I don't love them though, but let's see. The gnome traits are small size, escape artist, magnified vision, mental clarity, strong-minded, and predict weather. That's interesting. And then their expanded traits are mana increase, Trapper, lightning insulation, trade expertise, storm knowledge. They also get that agility decrease. Or I guess whereas humans got to pick, I think maybe just gnomes get less agile. And they're short-legged. Womp womp. So I guess they're giving all these measurements. I suppose these numbers are they supposed to be for bonus purpose or balance purposes, I should say. So let me just add these up. So let's see, -1, +2 is 1, +1 is 2, 2 is 4, so that's 5. For halflings, -1, +2 is 1, +2 is 3, +4, 5. Okay, so maybe they are kind of trying to balance those with some positives, some negatives. I did think that I get the reason why they got rid of it, but I think getting rid of the fact that as a species choice could have a negative, and I totally understand why they did it, and I do also think they could probably do it a different way. Don't put it on mental stats and things like that, but there could be other things maybe, is that it allowed you to have a bigger spread of abilities. Because if everything has to go to 0 and you really, you can't, either you end up with things like Aarakocra and you have trouble balancing it, because if you can't fly as Aarakocra, then you might not be one, but then giving them flight is more powerful. So how do you balance the flight with something else? Well, you can't do a negative, so you just kind of have to throw flight out there and either make it kind of terrible flight, or you just have to kind of fingers crossed that nobody minds it too much. Whereas if you could give some kind of negative, like, oh, okay, yeah, Aarakocra, they could fly, but they have hollow bones, which means they take extra damage from blah, blah, blah. Then it's like, oh, maybe it makes people feel a little bit better. It makes it feel like it's more balanced, Other gnome traits, Creepy little hands. Weird smell. Redditors. All right, we have orcs, dragonborn. Gotta have your dragonborn. I'm not a big fan of dragonborn. I don't know why. I think as a kid I probably would have liked them. I just feel like I know I actually like lizard folk, and I just think like why not just have dragons as opposed to this kind of, well, they're kind of dragons but they're not. Giantborn, so you can have those. Heavy, they have a mighty leap and they're a heavy riser. Ah, that's interesting. They have to spend 4 spaces of movement to stand up from prone. So they have 3 negatives. And they lose 1 to intelligence. Womp womp. See, this is where this is again like don't call it intelligence. Call it something else. Because you might want to say that giants as a species, I don't know, they don't send their kids to college. I don't know. It's a weird kind of thing, but it makes me feel less bad if you call it, I don't know, education, learning, or something like that, where it's just like they just don't go to school. They don't read much. Giants don't, they're not readers. Ian says their hot take is that the character level adjustment from 3rd edition was a good idea, just needed some more refinement. You can fly at first level, but you'll be level 2 when everyone else is level 4. Yes, that was the other thing, right? Is those, right, that other part of it, which was, yeah, you could, that level adjustment was another way of doing it. Instead of kind of having like they have here, which this is following more the 5e model of everything basically balancing to 0. Yes, you could say Aarakocra have a level adjustment. So Aarakocra, level 1 fighter, is basically level 2. And so them, kind of thing. Yeah, that's absolutely another way to do it. And yes, I think, and I feel like I'm pretty sure I did a stream on that the 3.5 source book. What did they call it now? Savage Species. But there's probably some middle ground where you could have something like that and make it workable. I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to come up with a universal system, which is great. But man, it felt very Gygaxian in the amount of maths you needed to do to try to figure something out. But you have to, if you're trying to balance essentially everything to this kind of character level. What was it called? There was was it ESL, ECL, something, whatever it was, your character level, like how many character levels basically a monster kind of template was worth. You had to do a bunch of math, but it was just made it a little bit less wieldy, and I think and practical than it could have been. Ruin says the Dragonborn and Tieflings just printing money. Yeah, people like it a lot. Ruin also says lack of disadvantage from natural weather on gnomes seems strong. Watch out for the gnome pirates. They fear no storms. Heck yeah. I mean, though the one thing is, right, I think a lot of folks playing these kind of games coming from 5th edition, they don't care. They don't really playing with weather too much, so it might not be that big. But yeah, in a different kind of game where weather and those things are weather and travel are really parts of the game, then absolutely that would be really strong. Get your gnomish ranger going. Hey, Squirrel Hermit. Oh, the Epic of Dreams. Drew likes the adjusted levels. Yeah, look up the 3.5. The whole system in 3.5 was interesting, and then there was that Savage Species. If you look on Drive Through, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Drive Through RPG. Hold on a minute. Oops. Hold up. Here we go. I got Drive Through up here already. Let's see. Savage Species. There it is. Oh, you could actually get it. Or I guess it's 3.5. There's 3rd edition. A little bit pricey. Well, it's $8. No, $7. $7.19 on sale, actually. Something is out of date. Reload the page. Hold on, I'll make a quick link for it, and I'll throw it out there. Let's see. 1 second. All right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. I'll just highlight that for anyone. There's kind of a quick link, and if we look at it, did I lose it? Did I lose it? No, I didn't lose it. Hold on. I did lose it. It's down here. There you go. Oh, I keep flicking my wrong window. And Savage Species goes through a bunch of that. Goes through a bunch of stuff. I don't know if they have the preview, but I don't know if it's worth $7 at this point. It's kind of more if you're interested in it, but it was a really cool model. I've often thought about, could I go and kind of make a more simpler, kindler, simpler version of that setup. Oh, because it is very useful. And in the white box, they talk about playing whatever. And so I know I've mentioned this before. Somebody said they played, I forget who it was, they played a Balrog in that original game, but it never got written up. As far as I know, no one has yet discovered what the write-up was for the level progression for the Balrog. But it would have been neat to see kind of how they did it and whether you could take that and expound it into a level progression easily, or if it was more like just by the seat of their pants. No idea. How did you get, were abilities front loaded, but then it was forever to level up? Were they back loaded where you had to get to whatever level you have to get to the level of the monster's hit dice before the thing's unlocked? Or did they, which is what kind of Savage Species tries to do, is give their ability to knock people over. And at 7th level, you finally get their ability to do kind of make, give people vertigo or whatever it is, or make them feel lost, that kind of maze ability. But we don't know the original methodology. But Savage Species, I think, was the kind of the closest they've gone to sort of trying to figure that out for everybody, making whatever system they used internally, maybe for everyone. But, you needed to have a good grip of your calculus and algebra to make it work. Okay, so this is a Beastborn, no default traits, and you get beast traits instead, and there's a bunch of stuff. So if you want your climb speed, burrow speed, no flight as of yet, but that one's coming. Could be a jumper. You can have some different senses. Oh, no, we do have flying. Flying body. All right, I like that. The beast one seems like a cool thing. All right, now we're into classes. Oh my gosh, where are we on time? Holy moly! All right, I want to try to where am I on the book? I need to see, where's the bookmark? Show bookmarks. Where am I? Man, oh, whoa. All right. I think this feels like a lot. I'm not gonna get too deep into the classes. I really just want to get a taste. Okay, so we're gonna get a taste. Barbarians, I think we get it. And I'm really interested in ones if they have anything really different than the kind of 5e stuff. I think I'm guessing that the ones that are sort of in 5e already are gonna hew pretty closely to kind of stuff the 5e does. Somebody can let me know if they don't. So your barbarians, your bards. I don't think they're changing up the bards very much. You get spells, right? Bard class features. Clerics, okay. That's fine. Druids, I think we got. Also fine. Wild form, like wild shaped, you get wild form. Fighters, I don't think fighters are getting anything. So they get maneuvers and they get techniques. You get your stamina points. I got your stamina points right here. So fighting styles, right? Archery, defense, dueling, great weapon fighting, lightly armored, shield defender, thrown weapon fighting, 2-weapon fighting. And then you get some adaptive tactics, which means what? The longer you spend in combat, the better you begin to understand your enemy and how to exploit their weaknesses. So that's kind of cool. But man, I really, for almost any combat, unless it's going fast, I don't really feel like they should go past third round. I mean, I know in 4th edition, some of these combats went long and it was like death. I think in 5e, it can be kind of bad too. You kind of run out of this. I think once you kind of run out of interesting choices to make, both sides should probably make some kind of assessment and be like, we're winning. And, I guess here's what I think. At the end of round 3, this is something I think. And I don't care. And this is not about, because a lot of people like to go, well, what if it's an animal? Animals are not stupid. Someone's going to sit there and let you pummel it. They get it. If you're losing the fight, they get it. In fact, I think like animals are probably more conservative on this. That's why animals run most of the time, because they do. A bear runs from a person or backs off, not because they're idiots. There's no reason to take the chance, because getting hurt as an animal is also kind of like death, because if you get hurt bad, it's there for you. You break your leg, your leg's broken for the rest of your life, and your life might not be that long at that point, because other things are looking to maybe get a piece out of you, and you can't hunt. So animals are extremely conservative. They're not just going to come in unless maybe they get into a frenzy, but usually it's kind of like they think they've got you and you're not hurting them that bad. If you're hurting them, if they didn't know what they're going to know, they're probably going to get out. And certainly if you're intelligent and you get to have 3 rounds and it's like, oh man, and I don't care if meta, whatever, if I got to make my, you think, in a sport, right? If you got to hit the goalie, let's say you're playing soccer, and the goalie's in great form and you hit a shot that's like almost perfect shot as you can hit, position, everything great, and the goalkeeper managed to get it. You're going, man, I don't think we're scoring a goal today. Now, and of course, if you're playing a sport, you still got to play out the game. But if you're in combat and you're like, you rolled a 20 or whatever, a 19, and it's like, ooh, you just barely nicked it or something or whatever, right? Like, okay, this is tough. And then if you're not really, you got to roll 19s to hit it, and you roll 18, you're like, nope, you don't hit it. And you're the fighter, or somebody else like rolled 19, and GM's like, sorry, you missed. Whatever it is, it's tough, and the enemy also knows it's tough. If you get to round 3 and you don't know basically whether you have a fairly good chance to beat this thing, then you should probably reconsider fighting it. And even if it's the party who oftentimes will, and I certainly don't accept I'm not trying to make myself an exception to this. Go in and say, oh, well, roll whatever. We can just roll good, or whatever kind of mental gymnastics we want to go through, or blind eye to the cold logic of, if we just followed the probabilities we know was fights against us, so we keep going. As a GM, as a referee, when we know what the odds are. Our party has really great armor classes, and these guys can't hit for anything. I'm going to have to be rolling 20s to hit them. We know it's bad. Don't just fight out the string. And this is not even before we get to kind of reactions or morale and that kind of thing. It's just like, look, we can't win. It's like, we might be the most, the toughest of the tough, but we're not winning. Most things aren't just going to keep flailing away at you under those circumstances. So back up, make a new plan. Get into a corridor or something, maybe is a better defensive position. Get some better weapons. If you can run back and get a different weapon, do that. Get help, whatever it is. Right? You're not just going to throw it away. So I would have a hard time thinking, oh yeah, if I can only get to round 5, I get all this stuff. It's like, man, as a player, forgetting as my character, as a player, I don't want to get to that high rounds unless it's like a really key big fight that's just super interesting and drawn out. As Rune says, clear the next 4 hours for the combat session. Yeah, I'm certainly kind of done with that. I mean, there's a place for it a little bit. Having a nice big fight, I think, can be a lot of fun, but it should be kind of that exception, which makes it kind of the big deal that it is, and not every combat is like hours of time. And I feel like this kind of system with the kind of crunch and things where you're all those things, the one thing that with crunch is it's generally going to add to your processing time. You're going to have to make more decisions. Your decisions might be a little more fraught. You've got all these resources you're wondering how to spend and everything. And so your turns take longer. So then you're piling up those rounds with those turns. Wouldn't want to do it every other week, which I'm so thankful for games, like OD&D, especially using the chainmail kind of rules, is so quick. I mean, granted, your decision space is a lot smaller, but man, it just flies by. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that probably at now where I am in my kind of gaming journey than I might have some time ago. I know when I first started fourth edition, I was all about all the little different moves you could do, but there was a certain point where it ground me down. And maybe if I hadn't had that 4E experience, I hadn't played super crunchy games or super kind of detailed combat games. I'd been playing Theater of the Mind, kind of D&D, pretty quick, snappy. I maybe I'd feel differently, but I have, so I remember. All right, class features, action surge, session win talent. That's fine. What was this? Oh, monks. What are they doing? Okay, so they get also doing key points. Yeah, I kind of wish, and this is maybe a missed opportunity. I would just have one resource that everybody use. You can just use it for different things. That's what I've done in my game. I'm going to write that up at some point. Michael Ferry asked if I was active. I was not super active. I wasn't. I hadn't started the channel at the time. I kind of had I did a blog for a bit, but then I kind of let it go. It's kind of a false start on the blogging, but yeah, I'd be on the. I took part in the forums. I don't know if I don't think I had the Hexpress persona yet. But yeah, I was certainly around, definitely lurking and corresponding with folks now and again. I bought a bunch of stuff off that G Plus Marketplace OSR kind of marketplace group there was, and man, I'm so thankful for that, especially looking back at it. So thankful. Okay, so we get more class features, key points, paladins. All right, what's new? Scions. All right, so you want your psioning. You want your psionics. Here you go. So using mana points seems like it's just a different way of doing spells. Is that so? Okay, so no, they have some spell features: Mind Blast, Telekinesis, Telepathy, which is their flavor feature. So you can't get it unless you either you're a full Scion or you get do the multi-classing twice in the Scion. Mind Sense, Invading Minds. Invading Minds want to know. I want to know. Rangers, favorite terrain, rogues, Sinister Strike, sorcerers. That's their Magic Conduit is for their flavor feature. Warlocks, warlords. All right, they're bringing the warlord back. I'm curious what some of the warlord abilities. Warlord was my first 4th edition character. I enjoyed the warlord. So you get inspiring presence. You get a commander's call. You can spend one action point and one stamina point to command a creature that you can see within 5 spaces that can also see or hear you. The chosen creature can immediately take one of the following actions of your choice as a reaction for free. As a reaction for free. See, here's where you get the confusing things, right? And I'm not saying this is what can happen, but here's where, like in the 5e thing, this would be problematic. I imagine. I haven't been in the 5e kind of thing, but if you have to, are they spending their reaction or is it a free action, right? Because if you'd say it was a free action, then you'd say there's no cost to it. But if it's them spending their reaction for free, kind of makes it seem like they're using up their reaction to do that. I would actually like it more as maybe a free action because you're spending resources. And if the problem with the warlord, and the thing I found out when I played with a character who's playing a rogue, and I tried to work with this rogue, but this player, great guy, but he's just very mercurial. You could never really tell what he was going to want to do from one moment to another. And I would try to set things up to use my warlock stuff to get him in position, say backstab, and they would go dancing off somewhere else, and I'd kind of get stuck. I'd be like, okay, I've moved over here. We're in position. So my next turn, I'm going to do my thing. In this case, say my commander's call, and then you can, and we go around the table. It's back to me. I'd look, and they're 10, 15 feet away, and not in position to do the thing now that I want to do. And I would just be like, damn it. And so the issue with this could be, I'm not saying it is because I don't know, but reaction for free, it's a little bit, I'm just not sure what it means, is that I'm spending resources to do a thing. But if the creature who I'm giving the command to also has to spend a reaction. I totally get it. If they don't feel like they want to spend the reaction. In other words, let's say I'm the fighter, I got the big bad on me, and the warlord comes up and I'm going to spend these things, and you can use your reaction to do this offensive thing. And I say I don't want to do that because I'm going to use my reaction to, I don't know, raise my shield or do a dodge do or do something else. I've got that plan. So it can be frustrating then to play the warlord where you think, okay, well, I want to use this stuff, but nobody wants to do it with me because I need somebody to do it with me to really do it. And of course, the other player might think, like, I don't want this warlord coming and just mucking with my plans. So hopefully this is just kind of a free action, but if it isn't, I would hope maybe they'll fix it to being free or just something else. So it doesn't, you're not asking two people to spend resources to do one thing. And two, it alleviates that concept of one player kind of pushing another one to spend something they don't want to spend. Does that make sense? It made sense in kind of where this came up in 4E a lot, right? Because like there was also stuff like, oh, as the warlord, I could move somebody, but then often it's like, well, who wants to be moved? And oftentimes they'd be like, well, nobody wants to be moved. So then I'm like, okay, well, that ability kind of either I can use it and nobody moves, or it's just like, well, I guess I can't use that ability then. So as much as I enjoyed the warlord, there were definitely I felt some kind of growing pains with the warlord. I almost wish that with the warlord, you just had a flunky, kind of like a hireling or a sidekick, and you could order them around to your heart's content. And at least you could have that if your party didn't want to do it. All right, so we had some pre-made spells, because remember, you could do some kind of ad hoc spell creation. I'm not going to read these because they're there for you, but you know. We got some special class specific spells, which I'm also not going to read through, but you got them. And then we have some updates, which I'm not going to read because I don't know the difference between these alpha updates. But if you've been following these alpha updates, then you get a nice little, I guess, kind of change log. All right, and we are done. Well, I didn't think it was going to go all white. Well, if you're going to do that to me, I might as well just, can I go to the top? Where's, can I go control page up? Nope, that changed which PDF I was looking at. Home. Ah, there we go. Okay, so we finished looking at DC20 Alpha 0.60. No, 0.6.1. I don't even know if this is currently up to date. I started the first half of the stream 10 days before this one, so apologies if I've missed some kind of updates. I guess my thoughts on the system, having not played it, it seems like people like it. So that's the first thing. Easy to look at all the kind of influencer types who apparently are very favorable on that. And I'm not saying that they're lying or being whatever, but I think there's a Kickstarter, you get all these influencers on board. I think a lot of them know each other. And look, I get it. If Daniel from Bandits Keep put out a product, I would more than likely be optimistic or favorable on it because, well, one, I think if anything, it would be the game that I'm currently playing in. So there's a reason I would like it. But two, he's a friend of mine. You're most likely going to be positive. And if I was negative, I probably wouldn't share it on a stream kind of thing, right? I get all that stuff, but it's been very positive. But also people who like Ian in the chat, and there was a fellow who was in here last time who were also very positive on the system. So take that with some weight. If you're looking for a 5e alternative and you want something that's a little bit crunchier, but maybe has smoothed out some of the edges of 5th edition, I can't say for sure. They're doing things a little bit differently, but it'll be very familiar to you coming from 5e. Doing things a little bit differently though. Maybe a little bit of a different learning curve. This one seems like, I think Ian had mentioned, has maybe front loaded the complexity a little bit, which you might like, you might not like. But I think in general, it's going to be a little bit more than 5th edition, maybe not as much as 3.5 or 3rd edition if you're used to that, bringing in some different features. I think there's a lot of things to like about it. For me personally, it's a bit crunchier than I think is where my kind of comfort level is right now. I almost would love to see something like this, but broken down into something more modular, or like give me the basic chassis, then give me these things that I can add. I mean, I know you can do that. You could break down the core rules and take out, say, I don't want flight and jumping and that. I'm going to do this. But I almost wonder if I don't know, even there's a space for it where you can have something more modular, but it looks good. It looks solid, right? I think the one thing that I just really appreciate for modern kind of current creators, is that you can grab this. You're not sure about the Kickstarter. You're not sure if you want to spend money on it. You can grab it. You can read it. Do the same as I did. This is not a special copy. This is not given to me. I I wasn't at all familiar with who is this dungeon coach. Just grabbed it off the Kickstarter from the website. You can give it your own read, see what you like. You can play it. I mean, this is a full. This is not like some kind of preview where you just get a little bit of taste here, a little bit of taste here. This is a full rule book. You could probably play whole campaigns with this. If you ran across something that, because it's alpha, maybe it's a little bit funky, you could fix it yourself. Do it, no problem. So there's really no reason if you watched any of this and you thought, oh, I kind of like this, or oh, maybe there's some things I could take away from this, or maybe give this a try one day when not all the parties here for the regular 5th edition game, so we'll just try something new, just create characters, do something. Give it a try. I'm not looking to replace 5e because I'm not currently playing 5e. So I'm not really the market audience for this. It probably isn't something that would be my first choice, but not because I think it's janky in any way. It just feels a little bit more crunchy than what I'm looking for. But if you were looking at 5e thinking, man, I'm kind of missing a little bit of crunch, DC20 might be for you. Might be. I don't know. It was a fun read. There is definitely some interesting things going on, and I think they've done a good job at kind of, I feel like what a lot of these products are doing these days are melding different features of different versions of the game, and then their kind of house rules and putting them together. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I think it's totally fine. Everybody's game, even the earliest versions of the game, were folks' house rules, and then going from there. So that's a perfectly fine place to start. This, I think, is a perfectly fine alternative. Whether it's a killer or whether it's better than 5th edition, I don't know. They're doing things a little bit differently. See if it works better for you than what 5th edition is doing. Maybe it speaks to you better, maybe it doesn't speak to you as well. But since you have such a comprehensive set of free rules to check out, no reason not to give it a read if you've got the time. But let me know what you think. I will put up a poll after this to see if folks would like me to go through character generation in this system. I almost think it might be more fun to do kind of a spell, like create some spells for it. That might be fun. Michael, oh no, not Michael. Magna says 5e Killers is mostly like a sales pitch. Yeah, totally. Of course it is. Of course it is. But I don't look at it, I guess if I was going to say, is this an absolute improvement to 5th edition? No, it's a little bit of a different way of doing things. Some people, I think it's going to speak to more than 5e. Some people may speak to less than 5e. But no, there's no way I could say other than just my, there's no objective way. Oh, this is objectively better in 5th edition. No, it's not. It's good though. Totally solid. All right, folks, I will put up that poll. So if you're interested in more DC20 or really if anything else DC20 comes up, Michael Fraker, if you're still here, did you ever put that idea that you wanted me to maybe do for a future stream? If I missed it, I'm scrolling back up. I don't know if I see it. Let's see. So if I missed it somehow, oh, I don't think you did. So shoot it over in the comments or on, or you can find me on social media or on Discord and let me know what that idea was. Well, I'm all ears, always looking for community input. Other than that, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye now.